Hello and welcome to Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Kayode Okikelu here in Lagos, sitting in for Seun Okinbaloye. Well, we'll begin with our big story. Naturally, President Bola Tinubu today facilitated what may be described as an end to the strained bilateral relations between Nigeria and the United Arab Emirates. The president, who has been away from the country for almost a week on account of the G20 meeting in India, made a technical stopover, it was called, in Abu Dhabi on his way back home. And what an impactful stopover it was, as the president, in what was described as a landmark agreement, repaired the strained ties between Nigeria and the UAE. Well, this was a major issue during the Buhari government, when some UAE businesses operating in Nigeria could not repatriate monies made, the suspension of Emirates flights to Nigeria, and visa restrictions on Nigerian travelers, amongst other issues. So those are just clips from that meeting earlier today. But what has changed really with President Tinubu's visit? Let's list it out for you. According to a statement by the president's spokesperson, Ajuri Ngelale, President Bola Tinubu and the president of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, today finalized on some major issues. Now, top on that list is the immediate cessation of the visa restriction which was placed on Nigerian travelers. That's top on that list. And of course, recall that both Etihad Airlines and Emirates Airlines are now to resume flight operations immediately into and out of Nigeria without any further delay. So that's a list. Next on the list is immediate restoration of flight activity through these two airlines and between the two countries. And this does not involve any immediate payment by the Nigerian government. That statement made that clear. And of course, there's also an agreed framework which will involve several billions of US dollars worth of new investment into the Nigerian economy. And that's across multiple sectors, including defense, agriculture, and others, by the investment arms of the government of the United Arab Emirates. There's also a joint new foreign exchange liquidity program between the two governments, which will be announced in detail in the coming weeks, according to that statement. So tonight on the show, we'll be bringing you some more insight into what played out behind the scenes. What does this mean for the nation, Nigeria, and President Tinubu's foreign policy for Nigeria as a whole? We'll be speaking with someone who witnessed this firsthand. You know what they say about diplomatic issues and the rest? They can be quite slippery. So we have joining us on the program tonight, just to dive right into it, Ajuri Ngelale, who is the special advisor to the president on that's a spokesperson, I should say, is a special assistant to the president on media and publicity. We were meant to have the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but we're now being joined by Mr. Ajuri Ngelale to discuss these issues and get more insight into this. He joins us live from Abu Dhabi on the program. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Ngelale.
Certainly a pleasure to be with you, Kayode. Thank you.
Indeed. I mean, this is a major one. The statement you put up earlier on described this as a landmark deal, a landmark development. So tell us, behind the scenes, really, how was President Bola Tinubu able to secure what you have described as this landmark deal? Not forgetting that this was a major issue during the Buhari government, which you worked with, and this lasted up until the end of the administration. So what was different this time around?
Thank you very much. So, you know, government is a large operation, and it involves far more than only a head of state. It is a team effort. And sometimes when you're working through certain intermediaries who have their own perspectives on issues, you can run into bottlenecks and log jams which may be difficult to surmount, which is why it was in the wisdom of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to really roll up his sleeves and dig in, to get directly involved at the topmost level of diplomatic engagement, which obviously is between the two heads of state. And he did exactly what Nigerians expected him to do when they voted for him during the February 25th presidential election in the country, which was to renew the hope of the nation by reconfiguring and reforming our economy through the aggressive attraction and promotion of foreign direct investment, of dealing directly with heads of state around the world and linking our business communities together in a way that would inject new life into our economy. And that on the basis of that, we would be able to build the nation that all of us have been looking forward to experiencing over the course of the last several decades. His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu today, through this landmark set of sub-agreements within this larger framework, has been able to live up to the pledge that he came on, which is that we are going to do things differently, that we are not simply settling into any kind of a status quo, but that we are going to add new elements, new dimensions to our relationships with other nations. Let me be clear about what I'm talking about. In your opening monologue and in some of the coverage I've seen since the news broke through my statement earlier today, there's been kind of this general notion that this is a restoration of ties or maybe a kind of a reset to a status quo. I think that does not do justice to what actually happened today. There was nothing like a foreign exchange liquidity program jointly agreed to by these two nations before the standoff ever occurred over the course of the last 1 year or so. There was no diverse set of billions of dollars worth of foreign direct investments across multiple sectors of the Nigerian economy before, a bottleneck came into the bilateral relationship. So yes, it is true that we have normalized relationship, we have normalized bilateral relations, but to say that that's all that today doesn't quite do justice to it. What we've done today is to not only normalize relations, but then to add new dimensions to that relationship, a partnership that are mutually beneficial to both nations. And I think as we move forward, the details of those investments, the details of the foreign exchange liquidity program that's been jointly agreed to by both countries will become clear. And I do want to add, this was not in the statement earlier today, I want to add that there are ongoing kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's between the respective ministers from both countries, as well as the national security advisors of both countries, as we really formalize kind of the more minute details of the agreement. But those details will be made available as soon as that's done.
All right. Well, the facts still remain that there were visa restrictions. There were flights stopped. I mean, those are the things Nigerians know. There were issues with work permits and the rest. And to that extent, the relations were strained. Yes, more dimensions have been added, but there's been a restoration, which you alluded to in that statement. And of course, we reeled out some of those other areas which you talked about, the liquidity, the foreign exchange liquidity, and the rest. But from what you said, it looks like the style of President Tinubu is quite different from that of former President Muhammadu Buhari, whom you worked with as well. You said that for President Tinubu, he went directly, and you stopped short of saying for President Buhari, perhaps it was more of by proxy, maybe the ministers take charge or what have you. Is that indeed the case?
Well, I think it's been a long-established understanding in the public domain that no two leaders are the same. You're going to have different styles, different approaches to governance. Of course, this comes back to the background of the leaders who end up, emerging as heads of state. In the case of former President Muhammadu Buhari, this is a man who lived most of his life as an official in the Nigerian army, in the Nigerian military. That his training, his orientation was all along the line of delegation, of chain of command, of function being, delegated to a specific place to a specific office for a specific function or reason. That is the background. The background of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is, of course, one that is private sector based, one of a private sector, professional who grew through the ranks of management by virtue of putting his hand on the plow and basically getting things done from one level to another level to another level. So naturally, that would impact one's view or orientation with respect to how you choose to get things done. That does not now mean that the respective officials of government don't have their roles to play. They have clearly defined roles to play. But obviously, any situation in which you have a bottleneck or a logjam or some sort of frailty within a relationship, I think you would have to do a kind of an examination or a diagnostic on what caused that frailty with a view to solving it. And I believe that His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done that. And of course, he's working with a team of different officials who may or may not have been involved in the process of creating these log jams in the first place, particularly with respect to the aviation sector and some of the other sectors where certain issues were made problematic in the past.
So let's break this down even further. So we had earlier on listed some of those major areas. And when it comes to negotiations, because I imagine that was what happened behind the scenes, diplomatic negotiations, the president went with his team, and he's spoken so highly of his team during this trip, saying he has a very good team. We saw members of that team there, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Aviation Minister, and the rest. So what changed hands? What was the catch, really? We know what we got, but did we have to let go of some things? You mentioned particularly that Nigeria will not be making any immediate payment. So for those payments, will they be made eventually? Is there a timeline? How much are we looking at?
Thanks, Kaude. What I would not want to do, and what I believe would be most unprofessional of me to do, would be to preempt the very important that our cabinet members, ministers, and government officers are currently doing with respect to this ongoing negotiation that's taking place between cabinet level officials of both countries with respect to tidying up the finer details of the agreement that has been announced. So I wouldn't want to go that way. I will say that we are committed to total transparency and accountability on the issue, and that all of the full details with respect to payments, with respect to how much those payments would be, and all of those related or associated details, they will be made available, made public when those matters are finalized. So that's that. But I would also say that it's not by magic wand, right? You don't just wake up and get to a point where you have the framework of such a substantial, robust deal that cuts across multiple sectors. These things are worked out through a very deliberate consultative process that does involve multiple levels of government at work simultaneously before you even get to the point of the two heads of state physically being in front of each other. So we give a lot of credit to the Nigerian government officials who participated very actively in this process that led us to this point. But certainly the diplomatic ability of His Excellency Mr. President and the clarity of his vision to be able to not only restore diplomatic ties across but to also now add new dimensions of depth, of mutually beneficial depth to that relationship. Right. It's something that I think Nigerians can appreciate. And the last thing, Coyote, is that, sometimes when you are in a historic moment, when you're living inside of a historic moment, it doesn't always feel like history is being made, right? You're just kind of living your life, you're doing your thing. It's when you look back that you fully appreciate that, wait a second, if you look back on our history, we've never really seen anything like this before. You're talking about a president, and President Tinubu has gone to India in 2 days and secured $14 billion worth of investment pledges, of which we laid it out in detail, exactly what companies were involved, what the sectors they're involved in, and how it's going to impact on the Nigerian economy. And then within a 24-hour, span of time, he arrives in the UAE and secures a landmark deal that moves all sorts of multi-sectoral encumbrances out of the relationship, and then adds new dimensions that involve multi-billion-dollar, investments across multiple sectors of the economy. We just haven't seen this before, so it's new. Nigerians are kind of taking it all in, but what we are saying is that we are going to continue to be open with our people. We are going to tell them what's going on and how it's going to interest them and benefit the economy.
Let me bring this in now
and create new revenues for the Federation.
Right, we'll get into some of the implications, which is very important. A lot of Nigerians are looking to see what this means, all of those promises, the pledges made. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for some of the economic indices that we're currently battling with? We'll get into that. But just to be clear, with this agreement that has been reached now, does this mean that from tomorrow, perhaps, applications won't be scrutinized? The restrictions are removed totally from tomorrow, because the statement says immediate cessation with immediate effect. Those words were used. So does it mean from tomorrow it is business as it ought to be, as usual? Not forgetting the work permits issues as well.
Every agreement comes with mutual responsibility. There's no free lunch. What I mean by that is the notion that, floodgates open up and that we go back to business as usual, in quote, that is not what Nigerians should expect. I want to be very clear about this so that everybody understands. One of the major challenges within the bilateral relationship with respect to visa processing, with respect to Nigerians, being able to migrate to the UAE, for example, was the fact that there was a kind of a laxity on the part of certain visa processes or certain applications that were being made that created a lack of specificity and a lack of diligent evaluation with respect to who is traveling to the UAE and why they're traveling. And this is why we had issues of just a few, bad eggs amongst our people, giving a bad name to all of us, which was a major sticking point as to how we got to this point. So what we've done as part of this process is put in place new measures that would ensure that there is effective diligence done on the part of both sides. That's the UAE authorities as well as the Nigerian authorities in making sure that any Nigerian citizen who is seeking to travel to the UAE, for example, is being thoroughly scrutinized, not in a way that is prejudicial, not in a way that is presumptuous or negative, but in a way that ensures that well-meaning citizens, people who want to go do business, or people who want to get an education, or people who want to participate as active and productive citizens, in those domains, that they are those people, and that they're not people who are getting involved in drug trafficking, or they're not people getting involved, in kind of some of the other deleterious modes of existence that some of our people have engaged in when they've traveled abroad. So these are some that have to be sorted out, but not in that is whimsical, in a way that is systemic, in a way that is lasting. And that is part of what we are agreeing to. interest of Nigeria to ensure that our best people and our well-meaning and peace-loving people are those who are, living abroad, because they're going to give us a good name and they're going to effectively represent us wherever they are in the world. And that's
So
what we want.
essentially,
It's not
what
in
you're
our interest
saying,
to have bad eggs creating a reputation for us.
so essentially what you're saying is this is not as immediate as the message may have
No, that is not
presented.
that is
How
not what I'm
long
saying, Kyle.
might this take?
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. The immediate cessation we're referring to is the freeze on visa processing. There are two different things here. What I'm talking about is a systemic reform to ensure that diligence is done on applications of Nigerians traveling to the UAE in a way that was not being done before. But what I am saying is that what the agreement struck does entail is the immediate cessation of freezes, blanket bans on Nigerian visas or on visas being processed for Nigerian travelers. Again, as I mentioned, the relevant authorities are in the UAE at the moment with me now, with Mr. President, going through line by line the issues as they conclude. But the agreement has been struck that the visa ban, the total general ban on Nigerian travelers being able to, process visas, that is ceasing immediately.
Okay, I think timeline is very important to this, so we can manage the expectations of Nigerians and ensure that we're all on the same page. The government is not saying one thing and the people are hearing another thing. So the president's overall trip began last week. The trip to UAE is just one of it. He was in India, New Delhi. Promises were made, pledges were made. And the usual question after such outings is, when can we begin to see a fruition, something on ground? That's the expression used. So what is the time frame to all of this? Because we're still looking at our unemployment figures, for example. We're looking at the poverty rates. We're looking at inflation. We're looking at our forex value, even our foreign exchange reserves. All of those things are indices that we look at and we think we need immediate action. So what kind of time frame do we have for those pledges that were made, for example?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think anyone who read the presidential press release with respect to the $14 billion worth of investment pledges in India would have seen that for those projects that we had specified timelines on, we actually announced them. So, for example, on the project with Skipper Seal Power Limited, that dealt with 20 new power plants of 100 megawatts capacity each over multiple states within northern Nigeria. I believe it was in the statement clearly written that would be done within 4 years, just as an example. We do understand that it's normal for Nigerians to ask the question, well, agreement is great, how is it going to be implemented due to so many decades worth of failed promises on the part of successive governments and all of that. But we also believe that we turned a corner under the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari on that issue by giving timelines to the projects that we said we were going to do. So, for example, the former president said we're going to get the second Niger Bridge done. Leave office. He did that. The former president said, we're going to get Lagos-Ibadan rail line done before I leave office. He did that. So the way that you restore confidence is by saying this we're going to do, this is the timeline on which we're going to do it, and then you deliver. If you don't deliver, then obviously confidence suffers. If you do deliver, confidence is increased. So we're focused in on being realistic with our people. This is not by a magic wand. It is a deliberate process. But to this issue that we're talking about right now, which is the agreement with the UAE, we want to get through the kind of the final bits of signing the dotted line, so to speak, and then the concrete details with respect to all the sectors will be made available. That information will be made available to all Nigerians. Just asking for a few days of patience. The main thing is we wanted Nigerians to be aware of the framework of the agreement that has been struck between the two heads of state.
There's still the conversation around local businesses, producers, whom need protection at this point? Because, I mean, they have power issues to contend with, energy issues to contend with, and there's always that question, when we call for foreign investment, when we call for, businesses, Nigeria is a fertile ground, as we say. Are there provisions also for businesses here such that they are not crowded out? They don't lose the market share to an extent. At least the businesses here are also, encouraged to thrive. So is the president aware of that? Is there a policy on that as well to ensure that there can be a win-win situation?
Great question. So that's really where we are, we are looking at investments that add value to local industry and local content rather than subtracting value. So, for example, if I have an Indian investor or a UAE investor bringing in maybe $100 million, a glass production factory, for example, it is very much in the interest of the Nigerian MSME that is vending in supplying sand, for example, for the production of glass, to have a new glass production industry in the country. Aside from the direct jobs that are created, Nigerian citizens who are going to be working within that new factory, and obviously the new tax revenue that's going to be paid to the state and federal governments with the establishment of that factory, you're also going to have the informal sector benefiting by being provide the inputs to make that factory run the way it needs to run. That's where you're going to have some local participation as well. Another side of this is you're also going to have ventures, right? These companies, first of all, they're going to establish Nigerian subsidiaries, number one. And then number two, we were very active about the process of creating a handshake. If you would recall, 20 Nigerian captains of industry, as well as the president of the Nigerian Chamber of Commerce, they were also present on the sidelines of the G20 as we met with the Indian investors. The reason why that was important is to be able to create that handshake so that you don't have any kind of a parasitic relationship being established where somebody's winning while another person is losing. We're all about creating win-win partnerships between the Nigerian private sector and our foreign direct investors, and that's something that's going to be an ongoing process. But we are excited about the possibilities for our MSMEs with the establishment of these large-scale industries.
So we're due for a break in just about a minute, but quickly, a lot of people have seen pictures from the G20 particularly. There's been a lot of back and forth debate, which you may have caught, and it talks about just how the president was received by global leaders at the G20. Perhaps he's one of the, well, I say, newest heads of government at that meeting. Just speak to it quickly. How was the president received by leaders of the world at that G20 meeting, his major one since he came into office?
Yeah, to this, Coyote, I think the proof is in the pudding. You look at the fact that the Chancellor of Germany, the head of state of the largest economy in Europe, is sought out to visit President Bola Tinubu in Abuja. That's just one telling sign. We have obviously the exclusive invitation of U.S. President Joe Biden, who also was able to meet with President Tinubu on the sidelines of the G20. He already has forwarded an exclusive invitation to meet on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in a few days' time. The reception has been warm, and the reason why is not simply because he's a leader with a very focused and detailed and specific agenda around how he's going to restructure the Nigerian economy, but also because this is a president who's taken very quick and bold reforms, not just the removal of the fuel subsidy that's been a bane on our economic life for 40 years plus, not just unification of the foreign exchange market, but also the fact that this is somebody who has established credentials as a defender of democracy, as a pro-democracy activist in the 90s, running from a military. Today, defending democracies within West Africa.
Let's take that break now. We still have a few issues to touch on, the reality on ground, as they say, for a lot of Nigerians. But we need to take this break right now. And when we return, we'll continue on this trajectory. And we'll also be discussing And some of the issues that have come out of Edo State. Is it a drama? Is it an impasse? We'll give you some more insight into that in a moment. So still stay with us right here on Politics Today. Well, welcome back. Still major story coming from outside of the country where President Bola Tinubu has been meeting with the leader of UAE, who has resolved some of the recent diplomatic issues between both nations, and even gotten some more commitments. We still have with us Mr. Ngalale, presidential spokesperson. He joins us live from Abu Dhabi, and he's been giving us an insight really into some of the recent activities of the president and also this latest one. Thank you for staying with us on the program. I'd like to talk about the reality of Nigerians right now. For those who feel detached, they see the reality, the cost of living, the rising cost of living, inflation, poverty, with the recent removal of subsidy, what it means to their survival at this rate. It's not even livelihood anymore, it's survival. What are the time frames that the president has to improving these particular indices of the people? Let me ask, does he have a time frame? If he does, what are the time frames that Nigerians can hold on to and say, at least by this time, things should get better?
I think there are a few things to unpack here. One is that Nigerians are obviously very brilliant people, and they understand that you do not have a magic wand solution to challenges that have built themselves up over a 50-year period of time. They fully recognize that when you inherit deficits, you have to dig out of those deficits. And that is where we are, which is why the president, not only during his campaigns, but consistently in office now, even as president, has been very consistent in his view that just as he did it in Lagos, he did not show up in 1999 as the governor of Lagos and kind of showed up promising, saying by 2001 you're going to have a metro rail. By 2001, all is going to be Uhuru and everybody's going to be talking about Lagos. He brought out a master plan, and he said, if we faithfully and diligently implement this master plan, it will take some time for us to dig out of this deficit, but we will get there. And obviously today, we know what Lagos is.
He asked Nigerians, if you can hear me, Mr.
Nigeria is a country.
The president had asked Nigerians not to pity him. Those were his words. And
that's correct. Absolutely.
The catchphrase was hit the ground running. For a country, and as you've said, Nigerians have endured this for decades. It's a plan of the president to let this linger for longer. Nigerians need something to hold on to. And that's what I'm asking you. Does the president have time frames, even for himself? We understand he may have given the ministers, but for himself, does he have time frames he has set and said, well, if I don't meet this by this time, then maybe I have failed my people?
Absolutely. I think I was building a basis to make the point that you're now, interrupting me to try and get me to immediately make.
Well, we're running out of time, Mr. Ngalale. We don't have the luxury, just as Nigerians don't have that luxury.
Well, let me explain. With respect to timelines, I think the president has been very clear that he has obviously released the palliative distribution program to Nigerians. It's being implemented across all states of the Federation. There are multiple points to this, right? And I've been on several channels programs discussing the issue specifically that have to do with how we're crashing energy costs, which had been rising through the establishment and intervention of the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative, which is an 18-month, again, that's a timeline, an 18-month program that deals with the establishment of 56 new CNG filling stations across all states of the Federation, in addition to co-locating CNG fill-up points at existing NNPCL retail filling stations on the one hand. On the other hand, the supply of mass transit, stations, buses rather, across all states of the Federation to ensure that we can crash the cost of transportation of Nigerians at the lowest income scale scale who rely on mass transit to be able to move around through the intervention of CNG-fueled buses, where you have CNG at about 150 to 250 naira per liter, as against 620 to 650 naira per liter for PMS. That will have a huge impact on the bottom line of Nigerians. The second leg of that is the issue of incomes, right, where you have stagnating wages at a time when food and energy costs have gone up. What we've said is that we're going to provide a new national minimum wage, which is now possible because states have more money as a result of the freed up funds from the removal of the fuel subsidy. So states have agreed. Those negotiations are ongoing. As soon as that's done, that new minimum wage will be announced, and that should ameliorate the conditions that many Nigerians are facing within the next few months. In addition to that, if we're talking about food, rising food prices, what are we going to do with that, and what's the timeline? Did you want to say something?
You can just land on that. You have 10 seconds as we wind down.
Yes. Thank you very much. So we have not been running away from timelines. We have not been making excuses. Everything we've done, from the G20 securing $14 billion of new investments, all is part of the solution. What we've done in the UAE today is all part of the solution. What we are saying is that we have gone past the point of talking and talking. We're now at the point of action. What are you going to go and get? And that is what we're focused on.
Well, we have been inundated by messages from people asking, where are the palliatives? In fact, I think Serap gave governors ultimatum to disclose spending on the 2 billion. Well, eventually it will be 5 billion when the monies are released. But there's still a lot of Nigerians asking, where are those palliatives? Yes, we can talk about 18 months, but they need immediate help. So is the president also going to be, I don't know, stepping in, speaking to the governors, perhaps those who have not done anything to do them, such that the monies are used right?
Well, let's not conflate issues, right? When we said 18 months, we're referring to the CNG initiative and not the food distribution initiative. The food distribution initiative is immediate, it's ongoing, it's happening right now. If you're question about the extent to which it has penetrated all wards and communities of the country. Obviously, that is a question, I think, that is best answered by the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum. They obviously do have a very important cooperational role in terms of making sure that they're effectively implementing their end of this process. You don't. What we've learned from social intervention over the last few years is you don't come up with an idea in Abuja and think that it's going to be perfectly executed on the ground if you've not carried the states along. What we've done from the beginning of this process is assiduously carrying along state and local governments to say, you guys have to step up and do your part of this. If you don't do your part in this, the impact we're trying to make from Abuja is not going to be felt on the ground. And that is a continuous process of systemic improvement. But we believe that we're making good progress in that direction because we are monitoring.
And I think that's a great place to anchor. But just quickly, when is the president back in Nigeria?
By the special grace of God and journey mercies, Mr. President should be arriving tomorrow.
All right. I know a lot of Nigerians will be looking forward to that. But we'd like to thank you so much for giving us some, at least, backstory to what played out today and over the past couple of days. Mr. Ajuri Ngelale, presidential spokesman, joining us from Abu Dhabi. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a privilege.
We turn our attention now to, well, party politics, particularly for the opposition People's Democratic Party. There's been so much happening pre the election, during the election, and now after the elections. And there are questions as to how the People's Democratic Party would pull itself together and perhaps play that all-important role of opposition. Well, this interview was conducted with former governor of Rivers State, a prominent member of the party and member of the G5. And here's what he said at that time. Take a listen to this, and we'll come back to have this conversation.
Let me tell you this. How would PDP have won the election when you refuse to consider the mood of the nation at that time? How would they have won the election? Look at the areas that PDP didn't win. What happened? Because of arrogance, because of greed, because of impunity. If PDP had done what they're supposed to do, then you would have talked about that.
Not because of some of you who worked against
Not some of us who feel that there should be equity, there should be justice, there should be fairness. And that's why I'm calling the National Working Committee. They should, with all matter of urgency, suspend the presidential candidate, suspend people like Abuni Tabor, suspend people like Sule Lamido from the party so they can rebuild the party.
Well, Mr. Wike, who's now the Minister of the FCT, speaking there in an interview with Channels Television's Seun Akinbaloye. So that naturally has generated lots of reactions. That's just an excerpt of it, by the way. The full video is on our YouTube page at Channels Television. So let's get a sense of how the PDP may be handling all of this. There's issues at the national level, even at the state level. We're joined by Mr. Don Pedro Baseki, who's the Director of Research, PDP Presidential Campaign Council, joins us live from our Abuja studios. Good to have you on the program.
Thanks to be here again, Coyote.
Well, so there's the national issues, which we'll come to, but also the state issue as well. I mean, a lot of people hearing your name alone would naturally relate you with Edo State and maybe remember what they've seen play out in the political space, the governor and his deputy. Images emerged today, what was described as the deputy governor relocating to another office, and that has caused a lot of debate. And I wonder, as a son of the soil, if I can use that term, as a member of the PDP, what you make of all of this going on, particularly in Edo State.
I will play the role of the peacemaker because I'm a younger brother of the governor and I'm a football striking partner with the deputy governor. And I think the time has come for all relevant parties to sheath the sword and look beyond the personality clashes. I also heard, I think that is correct, that the deputy governor had made some form of public apology to the governor, and he has withdrawn his case from the court. A case I once said in one of the programs here as a preemptive, you know, maybe a little ill-advised. So I would want, as a member of the PDP, I would like to stick to the national issues as a national campaign consultant to our flag bearer. Sheath the sword, sirs, for the sake of our people and for the sake of the retention of power within the state, and most importantly, for the sake of our shared commonwealth, so that we don't seem to become the unending, badly scripted melodrama in the public domain. So that is my advice to them. And I think both of them have ways, avenues, that they can, behind the sanctuary of locked doors, straighten the whole stuff out and sheath the swords. They all know themselves, and I think this can be handled. There's absolutely nothing that cannot be handled if there is the will. And if there is the will, they will both pave a way. And I think the deputy governor should also show a lot more remorse so that nobody wants to fight with his underwear. So maybe that is why the governor is a little more circumspect, because our state had given our deputy governor so much latitude, too much than any other state deputy governor in the immediate annals of our history. And I think both of them, as friendly as the ones were, they cannot just forget about the yesterdays they both shared.
I mean, for the politicians, they might think this is politics, as we heard the former governor of Ekiti State saying recently, but there are people who are watching, and they might take this serious, even beyond what the politicians are saying or doing. So it's important for them as well to be watchful. But you said you're playing a peacemaker role. So let's talk about the national issues now. You used the term sheath the swords for Edo politics, for the governor and the deputy governor. Incidentally, a leader in your party used similar terms, Chief Bode George, when he was talking about how to resolve the issue between the former governor and perhaps the leadership or some leaders in your party, saying the issues should be resolved amicably. Some think no. Some issues have been brought up, some actions have been made, utterances that should be punished. And I wonder, what is the thinking then really on the way forward, specifically because the PDP has a major role to play, at least now, as a major opposition?
I would like to start immediately with the up sound that was played earlier, which was an interview that was held just last week by Mr. Nyesom Wike. Why I would say shoot the sword in Edo, I'm talking about persons who are still within the same party. For anybody to still consider Mr. Nyesom Wike as a member of the PDP, that person is just playing roulette with the truth. Mr. Nyesom Wike is not a member of the party. The fact that he has not been officially pulled out from the party, expelled or expunged or suspension is an aberration, is a hiatus. It even beggars the question, because you were speaking, shown in that interview, was speaking with the sitting minister of an APC government. This is very clear. We are in a multi-party democracy. You get my point? So I think in terms of, you use now the internal PDP internal crisis. The PDP internal crisis now seems to have is being fueled by external factors who are playing the ostrich, one leg in, one leg out. That cannot continue. If you are a man of verve, if you are a man of integrity, you want to work at UAC and collect your money at John Holt. It doesn't work that way. You see, for me, I think it is laughable for persons to continue to give the newly appointed FCT minister the latitude to be riding roughshod over everybody. When I heard him speak now, I revolted within myself. My sense of reason and my sense of propriety actually despaired itself within myself. I cogitated and got angry. Why, if Pedro or Baseki has decided that certain persons I had some form of alliances with in the past no longer serve my purpose, we no longer have a commonality of interest and purpose, the best thing to do, the honorable thing to do, is to leave. But of course, you can say he's playing a Mephistophelian role, like a Satan lieutenant. It was on this same channel. I still remember that popular interview. You also interviewed him once upon a time, Kayode. That interview with Shehu Anko sitting, Bengal Labour sitting with him in his palatial courtyard in Port Harcourt. And he said, unquote, Nigerians are not a race with short memories. He said that the APC was a party of cancer people. The PDP, he qualified it, a party that had malaria. So right now, he said if he goes to the PDP, APC, it will seem as if he's with the devil.
So help us understand
this. The man
this.
Right now is a lieutenant for those people he once described. I didn't describe them. So
well, let's help us understand this quickly. Just quickly, help us understand this. So you've talked a lot about the former governor, but a lot of people would also ask, what about the party? The party has its mechanisms. Is it that the party does not have enough courage to do what you are suggesting or what you are asking the former governor to do? Isn't the onus on the party? And they always say, no man is bigger than the party, so we expect that the party should be bigger. Shouldn't the onus be on the party, its leadership, to make a decision?
You are a very smart boy. I get scared when you interview me sometimes.
Nothing to be scared about.
Let me put it this way. I will use you to answer the question. Your first line was, Bode George, one of the founding members of the party, BOT member of the party, once upon a time vice chairman of the party, had said, let's look for peaceful ways to settle this. And that is what the background of the party, to my understanding, have been doing prior to now. But that very interview crossed the line. It was having a Rubicon, and he crossed it. Suspend Tambuwa, suspend Atiku Abubakar. Who is Nyesom Wike? That is my point. And I think what he has done, is like putting his finger on the trigger. Many have wanted, there are doves and there are hawks who have taken variegating positions. But that is what the Bible says. It says, how can anyone come together except we agree?
Well, it's always interesting how
That is my point.
politicians hold the holy books dearly, can quote easily from the holy books. But I'd like you to simplify this. Let's wind down.
Kayode, you have to understand, I am a politically active person. I've never run for election. I've never been voted for. I've never been a politician, a political appointee.
I understand that. Just help us understand
color.
this
It is
as we wind down. I
Yes.
understand. So would you say, yes or no, that the PDP, as it is right now, the leadership is courageous enough to take the appropriate action? Yes or no?
I will put them on the line, yes. And they had better. For the sake of the greater survival of the party.
So you're talking about the chairman of the party as it
called.
is right now and the NWC?
The chairman, the acting chairman of the party and the NWC are a collection of gentlemen.
All right.
But right now, push is coming to shove. And I will leave us with one Latin phrase. Peace pacem para bellum. He that wants peace should be prepared for war. But when you get huddled down, hobbled about, browbeaten by a man who has taken insults and verbal diarrhea into stratospheric levels, it is time we call the spade a spade and pull this badly skewed broom where it should be.
We have to anchor now.
That is the truth.
And I'll
Wike is not God.
We have to anchor right now. And I'll end with English and say thank you so much for being a part of our show this evening, Mr. Don Pedro Obaseki, Director of Research, PDP Presidential Campaign Council. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Well, we have to anchor at this point. Politics, always interesting. We're back tomorrow with a fresh package for you. Thank you for watching. I'm Kado Kikere. Good night.